I've never been told I can't do it. I've never been told I'm too busy. I've never been told, no, by anybody in the profession. They've always wanted to pour. And I feel like that's just everybody. I haven't met anybody that's been like, I'm not helping you. And so I feel like if you ask, the community will come. And if they don't know, hey, we know somebody else who can help you. 3,000 people in a room in Toronto, and a lot of us being, not from Toronto and coming in, I feel it's a big deal. And that these type of spaces and opportunity are places to say, hey, I have a problem with this, or I need help with this. Let me find somebody who can really uplift me.
Welcome to the Philanthropy Masterminds podcast, brought to you by DonorSearch, the show that takes you inside the lives of thought leaders, innovators, and changemakers in fundraising, philanthropy, and civil society. I'm your host, Jay Frost. Today, we speak with Dimetri O'Brien, Development and Communications Manager at New Endeavors by Women, and a recipient of the Outstanding Young Professionals Award from the Association of Fundraising Professionals. Dimetri has raised significant sums across several roles and organizations, including over $250,000 for HIV/AIDS programs, upwards of $500,000 for the first national STI testing campaign, playing a key role in securing $1 million for St. Coletta of Greater Washington, and a 30% increase in online support in his current position. We caught up with Dimetri at AFP ICON in Toronto.
So, well, first of all, congratulations
Thank you.
on the award.
Thank you.
I didn't have a chance to hear any remarks that you might have made, but I'd love to hear about what this experience has been like for you, but also maybe what you shared, because those who aren't at the conference wouldn't have heard any of that. So maybe we can start there. What did you share when you were on the stage?
I thank everyone for mentorship, and I think that's a big piece of being a young professional, especially being in philanthropy. You talk to people who necessarily don't ever get the opportunity to have mentorship. They may have the formal education, they may have the real world experience, but to actually sit with other fundraisers or people that do the type of work you do and have them pour into you, I feel is a big piece to really cultivating yourself in this field, and really positioning yourself in the field. So I really wanted to speak on that and how important mentorship is, as well as to thank mentors and people who may not even realize that they're mentors. Because there isn't a formal conversation, there's definitely space for people to pour into you and to be a mentor of sorts without ever saying, hey, I'm your mentor and you're my mentee. And so definitely AFP DC, people who I've met in passing have always been very kind and very outward with, hey, do you need resources? Do you need help with this? Are you working on your CFRE? What are you doing? And so just thanking them, and also letting people know that I'm here to stay in fundraising and philanthropy, and I would love to make my mark in that and go forward and advance fundraising, specifically Black philanthropy and fundraising for other communities that necessarily aren't always in the room when you talk about fundraising or development.
There's a lot to unpack in all of that, but that's a wonderful way to begin. But maybe we can hear a bit about your own story, your own beginning story. So what brought you into this kind of world of fundraising?
I heard a comment after I got more of a formal fundraising title, you're always raising money. And I look back at the work that I've done, and being in program management, being in communications management, I always found myself, especially in the nonprofit space, looking, asking, talking to people about money. But yet nobody was calling me a fundraiser. I was even at places or spaces where there weren't formal development teams. And I honestly think some of those nonprofits probably didn't know what development was in that formal capacity, like with some bigger organizations, but they still wanted you to raise funds. They still wanted you to speak to donors, get donors, prospect donors. And then I just thought one day, what does that look like for me as a communications professional, but also as a fundraiser? And that's when I got exposed to AFP, and I learned more about the actual profession of fundraising and the fact that people do this and this is their career. And so that's how I pivoted into fundraising. That was within the last 3 years. Started over at St. Coletta as a communications and development associate, and then kind of just built out my own trajectory from there. Started joining AFP and being more active with AFP, as well as working and studying for the CFRE has enlightened me into, the formal and the ethical practices of fundraising. And so, that's me in a nutshell. I feel like I'm one of the people who I would love to speak to who do fundraising in their day-to-day, but they don't get the credit for that. And I would love people who do that to get the credit and be in, formal spaces. And so that's where places like ICON and all of the things that AFP offers, as well as the other organizations in fundraising, I feel help and really push us to find a lane and find a niche for ourselves. But yeah, started in communications and realized that I was always in some conversation about funds or donors or grants. And so I feel like that was me rolling everything into one and stepping into an actual, hey, I'm a fundraiser, and really admitting that. I think that's a big piece of it.
I'm a fundraiser. It almost sounds like a confession.
Yes, it's a confession.
I wonder why it is that organizations either don't know or don't fully embrace this role, especially in smaller or emerging organizations. Why do you think that is?
Capacity. A lot of organizations rely on what they get from government funding or what they get from people who just know or are donating based off of the story or the connection, but they don't know that they can build those out into more robust campaigns, developments where you can actually build a donor base. And so I think it's a matter of capacity. I've spoken to people at larger nonprofits. I'm like, hey, what are you guys doing on the front of development? And they're like, what? What do you mean development? Like when you hear development, they're like, oh, we're building something? We're developing infrastructure? No, yes, also your infrastructure for your donors, but what are you all doing for fundraising? And then you tell them that, they're like, oh, we have a gala or we have something, and they don't have anybody in that formal capacity where they can pour into fundraising for the mission and for the purpose of the organization or what the organization serves. I just think it's a matter of capacity. It's a matter of getting the right people in the right places to say, ask that $1 million question, why aren't you fundraising? Or what is your fundraising plan? And so I think with the newer generation of fundraisers and, us being very digital and focused in that way, I think we've gotten more out there and letting people know, hey, fundraising is not this siloed small space at specific places like universities where hey, we need money. Everybody needs a fundraiser. Everybody needs some form of development professional, whether it be a consultant or somebody there full time, to really flush out what you're doing and what your giving looks like so that you can have many more years to come in your organization so your organization can grow.
It sounds like you came at this from the communications end.
Yes.
And then moved into this, which is, I think, it sounds like a natural transition.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Even though, as you use that word silo, there's often this silo that occurs between fundraising and marketing.
Yeah.
You jumped that chasm. But the origin, I guess, here for you is communications. So what do you see as the similarities and differences, if any, between these two very, synchronistic
I feel
activities?
like with fundraising and with comms, there is that, at the end of the day, there is an ask. There's a need. There is something that there should be the end goal. And I feel like a lot of the overlap of that is funding. It is funding. It is storytelling. It's engagement. And I don't know if communications professionals and development professionals have really did a big and good, a robust crossover where they realize we're here for the same purpose. We just have different ways of conveying it. And so whereas your communications professional may be so caught on the outline and the campaign and how it looks, your development professional may be more concerned about how it reads. And is it actually going to incite change? Is there a call to action? Are these things in there? And they may not want to go down the same road, but they're leading to the same place. And so I believe that getting in the rooms and having kind of this, breaking down this wall where you have a lot of cross collaboration is what I think opened me up to realize, these are very similar. We have similar goals. So what can we do to combine? I do think it's different in the more so longevity of things, because you may get a good fundraiser, you're always going to need funds, whereas your comms professional, you may not always need comms. You may not always need things going out, and that shouldn't be the case, but a lot of people I've seen have taken more of a step back on printed materials, digital materials, making sure we have a robust social media presence, as opposed to, no, I can just work my direct mail and I can work my donor list and I can fundraise from that. But I feel like when those two worlds meet, that's when you get the best of everything and the greatness of both professions. And I feel like as we move forward, definitely in development and fundraising, communications will be a standard where it's okay, you're a communications professional as well. And so we'll be able to kind of cross collaborate. But I feel like it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's a lot of the same purposes. We just have different ways of getting there. And I feel like when you have a really good comms team and a good development team, you can kind of get through the weeds of what that means.
You talked about mentorship before, and digging into that a little bit, I wonder if the mentors that we have, formal or informal, like you talked about, if they are tuned into this and helping us to meet this need to bring together the conversations we have with people about the things that are important to us, together with the invitation to support those actively, financially. Where are mentors in all this? How formal is that? And does it also need to change? I mean, what does it mean to you in terms of...
To me, I feel like the mentors are there. The mentors are out here. Like, there's a lot of people who are willing. They're just, nobody asks. They don't ask, and when they don't ask, they don't have like a game plan for what that ask is. Like, hey, I want you to be our mentor. Okay, well, what are we working on? What do you need me to help you with? What can you help me with? Because a lot of times mentees pour into their mentors as well and help them in different ways. I feel as though it's really on the shoulders of the mentees now, because we have access. The people are here. The people, our elders or whoever, and more mature and seasoned people in this profession are here, and they're willing to help. You just have to break down that wall and have the conversation. So for me, mentorship is anything that I come to you at the table and say, hey, I have a deficit in this. Maybe my public speaking is not the best. My writing may not be the best, but I know you're the best in that. So what can you do to help me get it up to par where I want to be? So it's a collaboration of ideas. And I also think we talked about the pedagogy of elders and eldership and what that looks like, and how, at least in academia, it looks like I want my ideas and my thoughts to live on, so let me pour into a younger person. And I think when both sides kind of approach it from that, it becomes a really magical place, because it's like, okay, like hearing Ken say he had 67 years of fundraising experience. That is something that I want to learn. I want to know everything you have. Give me everything. If you can download it in a PDF, that is what I would want. Because you have to think, as he retires and as he steps out of this in his formal capacity, we want those ideas to live on. We don't want to have to say, well, let me call Ken and find out what's going on. No, he's poured into many people, so we can go and say, okay, this is Ken's mentee. He's been their mentee forever. He would know how Ken would approach this. And then we have a sharing of ideas, and then we really get a collaborative effort.
It's interesting the way you place that emphasis. It's on the mentee.
Yeah.
Is that a hard burden for the mentee? I mean, especially for people really entering the profession. Yeah. And I don't know how many years you've been in there. How many years have you been in the profession?
This will, fundraising 3. So
3. Yeah. So did you just come to this knowing that, well, when I need something, I just ask? Or
because the people around me, where did that come from? Where did the people around me set that up as how our framework of relations work. Okay. When I met them, hey, if you need something, let me know. A lot of people say that, and a lot of people never either follow up, or it's just something nice to say. But I knew when I actually needed something, they were there. Hey, what's the good class to take to get these last couple of CFRE credits? Hey, go talk to Jack. Jack Coletta has everything on CFRE. So we go find Jack, and then from there, there's an exchange of ideas. Jack introduces me to Ken. Ken is Men of Color in development. So there, we have another level of engagement and networking. And so as I'm going through, I'm collecting little tidbits, and all the while, they're telling me, okay, you want to do this? Great, go talk to this person. They know how to do it. And so when I saw that and how that was going, I was like, okay, I want this for my age group and even other age groups. So I always try to either network people or say, hey, reach out to so-and-so, because I've never been told I can't do it. I've never been told I'm too busy. I've never been told, no, by anybody in the profession. They've always wanted to pour. And I feel like that's just everybody. I haven't met anybody that's been like, I'm not helping you. And so I feel like if you ask, the community will come. And if they don't know, hey, we know somebody else who can help you. 3,000 people in a room in Toronto, and a lot of us being, not from Toronto and coming in, I feel it's a big deal. And that these type of spaces and opportunity are places to say, hey, I have a problem with this, or I need help with this. Let me find somebody who can really uplift me.
Are there places where that kind of interaction just isn't taking place, and we can do anything to do something to encourage it? Because even the way you framed that, it was going into some of these maybe early employment opportunities, that people started the conversation by saying, if you need anything, come to me.
Yeah.
But it also sounds like you were already in a mental space where when you heard that, you took it seriously. You took action. I get the sense that sometimes, I know I felt this in my own life, that I thought that was just something nice that people said, and I didn't necessarily then take that action. Are there ways that we can encourage more of that, where we get people who are maybe a little shy to move forward and to just seek out that advice, especially in a big space like this one?
I feel like that's where it comes in, because I know a lot of people have anxiety. They're not the type of people who are outgoing and will, while they may need something, they're not going to go for it. And I know for me, in different spaces and places, I don't like to ask for things either, especially if I know it's probably going to be a no. But at least in this space, I know, and I feel like it's getting them comfortable in the smaller and then bringing it up. So like for me, I went to Bridge. Bridge is, they call it the local, but I met a lot of people who came and traveled into DC for Bridge. And so that for me was, moving up from small scale chapter, small networking into Bridge, a smaller conference into a larger conference. I was able to kind of warm up to people and have them warm up to me as well, because you don't know me, I don't know you. And so we're making this first relation. I want it to be good. And so I feel like people go into that with that mindset of, hey, if you need something and actually take that seriously, then we can build more of a working rapport and more of a community. And, I know at least 10 people now I can ask for specific things and know I can actually either get it or get a contact. So it wasn't overnight. It was definitely a slow thing, but being active in your professional groups as well helps. Serving on boards, serving on committees, all of those things helps you kind of break out of that shell.
Right, and I know that the chapter AFPDC is one that has a good-sized footprint, but it hasn't, especially during COVID, it wasn't holding a lot of live events.
No.
And so making a decision to participate actively is important.
It's important.
That's great advice for all of us in all these chapters. Tell us a bit about your current organization, what you're doing with them, and so forth.
So currently I'm at New Endeavors by Women. We're located in Washington, D.C. This will be the 36th year of them being a facet in the D.C. community. We help women move out of homelessness from whatever situation that caused homelessness. So from domestic violence to substance abuse, we help them get into transitional housing or some type of transitional support where we get them into permanent housing. We currently house 130 ladies from all over the country that come to DC to find resources. We link them with case management, education opportunities, as well as work. We help them save their money, manage their money, financial literacy, everything you can think of, all while housing them in our sites and feeding and all of the things that you need to really lift yourself up and succeed. I'm currently on the development team there. I lead the communications as well as assist with my director in helping with the development and fundraising. I've been there since September. Just had some recent great campaigns that I've helped and assisted and led in the time. From Giving Tuesday, where we had 50% over what they usually would get on a Giving Tuesday. And so we were really proud of that as far as metrics goes, and we've definitely increased their footprint and what their brand looks like in the community through digital campaigns. And so I'm just really building out a robust social media kind of a new and modern look for them, moving into more video, more storytelling, telling of the client story, as well as new things like telling of our donor story, like why do these people give, as well as the thank yous and the stories from the clients and saying, hey, this is where your money went, and I'm telling you thank you about where your money went, and this is a tangible thing that you can see. So kind of getting into that type of storytelling and really robust blogs and written pieces about why we do what we do so people can get a better insight. So
why is that important to tell both the donor story and the story of the people that you're serving?
People like to know where their money goes. While people are altruistic and there's philanthropy and all of these wonderful things, yes, they want their statements at the end of the year, but they also want to know where their money goes. And for those engaged donors who want to know, I can tell you. So I walk you through exactly, hey, we did this month, we did this, we were able to house 3 people, and this is what they're doing. And it gives you that warm feeling of knowing you helped as a donor and where it went. It didn't just go, get squandered somewhere. We went and we actually did tangible things. also telling it from the client story is because you often hear, and when I first started, I would hear, okay, yeah, that's the place where, that's a shelter. No, we are a transition housing. This is a home. This is some place where somebody feels safe. And I wanted to kind of change that narrative, and I felt like people didn't know what we were doing and how we were doing it, but more so who we were doing it for. And so for those clients who are ready and available to tell their stories and are willing, I make sure to document everything. Like, how did you get to this point? And you would be surprised at like the stories you get of just, people in profound wealth or in profound places where they never thought I would lose everything. And then they lose everything, and then we help them get that new outlook on life. And so being able to showcase kind of the progression of a person and getting them back on their feet is, to me, like very, it's very a high priority for me. And so that's what I've been doing with the storytelling aspect of it.
What attracted you to the organization originally? You've worked at a section of different, community-based and other, organizations with a big advocacy role as well. Why this organization? You're serving these families very well. It is a small number of families to help them get from where they are to where they need to be. Why this?
Growing up with women around and being raised by my mother, I have a younger sister, you see women going through things, and I kind of felt like I was on the other side of like the table. Like, I get it, but you never can really know a person's story. And so in supporting women around me, I felt, okay, if I can support you like this, what can I do to really make my mark bigger in supporting women and making sure that women have resources? And so when I saw the opportunity, I said, that's definitely where I want to be. And so I was able to successfully gain the role. And so I've made sure that is a priority of mine, of just making sure that I not only help women, but I highlight their stories and let other people know that even if they're experiencing the same thing, you're not alone.
As a man working with women in this journey, has that ever been challenging for you? Because you kind of, I'm not thinking of the people that you're working with, your colleagues, or the people that you're working to help, but also just the community at large. Do they get that initially? Have you found that the different experience that you have as a person has been helpful to telling those stories in a different way?
So the lived experiences I have, I feel talks or speaks to some of the women in some way, or some of the people that I interface at work. But then there's other things where we will just never know how it feels to be or to live those experiences. And so I feel like when I sit down for our engagements for storytelling, the first thing I do is I let them know it's an open space, and if there's anything that we don't want to talk about, we don't have to talk about it. But I also share about where my experience intersects with theirs, so that they feel a sense of comfort, but as well they get into a place of knowing, okay, this is not just me. I'm not the only person that goes through bad things. And so I feel like me being also the privilege of being a man in this space is they get comfortable with, like, okay, this is a new person, a new face. I can speak to him in a different way. And so they get comfortable with me. They get comfortable with me like I'm a nephew, a brother, a son, and we really have those kind of deep conversations where we unpack the whys, and then I can pivot those into telling a very remarkable story about what happened or how these people are getting out of their situation. But no, I don't think there's ever been a hindrance on gender for me, but definitely I feel like it's helped me gain access to where they feel comfortable and they feel like, okay, it's somebody new face, I can trust him, and he's going to make sure that he captures me in the best light.
I really appreciate that answer, in part because it gets to the heart of another question, which we're all kind of discussing, but sometimes kind of going around it, which is where difference enables us. And we talk about it in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, but we often just then reduce it down to an acronym without really talking about what it means or how it's not just a beautiful thing, but a helpful and productive thing. Yeah. And you've just described it in terms of gender. Are there other ways that you imagine that this kind of the DEI conversation, I've just done it too, the DEI conversation will let us be better, not just as fundraisers, but also our organizations and the people they serve. Like the organization you're with has already been there for 36 years. And if anything, there's a greater need today for that than there has been since, at least the 80s. So how can we make sure that people outside this hall who have been hearing the diversity conversation a lot, maybe more than in the past, and hopefully more in the future. How can we make sure that that spreads out across the space in a way that they can receive it and then they can not just amplify it, but totally embrace it? Because they see that will help not just their organizations to grow and to raise money, but also to help all the people they serve.
I think the first step in that is stepping away from the DEI conversation as though it is simply, a lot of people go in and say, oh, this is about race. This is only about race. When you have issues of ageism, you have ableism, you have all the other tracks of things that can also be as bad. I think the conversation, when it is structured or framed from solely race and they go in, a lot of people, they close their ears. A lot of organizations don't really want that, and they don't want that conversation to be had, or they go around it and navigate it. I've been in organizations where it's like, okay, we're diverse, and then you bring in a DEI consultant, and the DEI consultant's like, they're diverse, and they're not addressing, yes, there's other people that have other things. Yes, you see us by color, and yes, we're diverse, but what are the other nuances that are going on? I think the biggest piece of getting the conversation out of the room is going back and really doing an assessment and checking in with people and kind of getting a survey of what your organization. I feel like once it starts at home locally with your organization, of knowing, okay, what can we do better to be more diverse, then we can kind of open the sphere. I feel like the DEI conversation, as they call it, has been very, okay, these are the DEI problems for this organization, and they handle it, and then it kind of gets brushed under the rug, and then that's done, and there still may be issues, but did you address all of them? Did you address it from a real equitable, like, did you really want this to be an inclusive space, or did you just want this to make sure you're not anti-racist? And I think when you get into surveying and really learning what it is to be inclusive all the way around is when you really spread that idea and you let people know, hey, this is not just about race. This is about, we want equity for all, and whatever that looks like, whether it be people who are not in equitable spaces financially, or whether it be healthcare, whether it be race, whether it be, ageism, ableism. What can we do to make sure everybody is in an equitable space? And I think definitely places like AFP ICON and other AFP events has been really a champion in spreading those ideas. But as people, it's really important for us to go back and then spread what we learned here to others, just not in our space, but friends, family, anybody that you can really talk to that makes the impact. That's how you really get the idea out there, because now they can understand that it's not just one-sided, and they can really engage with the topic.
Yeah, that's such an interesting response all the way around. And that last part, that our organizations are not kind of ivory towers, whether they're $1 million or $1 billion, they are part of a community and probably could be part of a bigger one. Yeah. And it's just a matter of how they see themselves, how they interact with others. And that's a beautiful thought. As you're moving forward with all this, I'm wondering where you imagine this journey taking you personally. You've talked about the impact. It's not just with your work, and also as not just a mentee, but a mentor. You described that, but what else do you imagine as you look forward? Because you've been through a succession of organizations with terrific missions. What's next for you?
What's next? I feel as though I would like to be at a place, professionally and personally, to really pour into people as they poured into me. And it may not be today, and it may not be soon, but that's what my overall, like, can we provide linkage to resources for professionals who are interested in fundraising? Can we start talking about fundraising at an earlier stage in, like, the educational part of things? Like, imagine, we have high school fundraisers. Like, imagine if we went even, like, and then, like, teaching kids, like, hey, selling candy bars, you're fundraising, and what that looks like. I remember getting the box of candy bars and just being told to sell them and not the why. And so really teaching people that, hey, that's something good to do for you as a person, but also this can be a profession. And so I really just want to be in a place where I can educate and link people to the people that they also can best see themselves working with and speaking with and being mentored and being a mentor to them as well. So whatever resource that looks like, I would like to be the resource that helps people get where they need to go.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Philanthropy Masterminds podcast. If you'd like to learn more about new endeavors by women, visit nebw.org. Our thanks to our sponsor, DonorSearch, the world leader in fundraising intelligence, and of course to our producer, Jack Frost. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, the DonorSearch YouTube channel, or wherever you like to listen, and consider giving us a like and a positive review so others can find us. Check out our live webinars and webcasts on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and come back next week for another interview with a leader in the world of social good. Until then, this is Jay Frost. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.